Hey there, everyone. It's Christy, and welcome to the live Hangout. I'm here with two of my favorite patrons, mostly because they show up and talk to me, so I get to know them. So you're my favorites. I mean, everybody's my favorite, but you guys are especially my favorite. And we had some last-minute tech problems, but we've hung out so many times now like a well-oiled machine. We had our communications all set up and managed to crisis manage and only end up a minute late. So yes, we're doing the June Hangout, and that's for the people who financially support my channel with at least $1 or its financial equivalent in your currency per month. And that is just my little tip cup. If you guys enjoy the content and enjoy what I do and want to make a small contribution, that's the way to do it. But to give the extra bonus, I do have a once monthly hangout with my patrons where we can talk about pretty much anything. I've suggested a topic for today, but before we start on that, why don't we catch up and see how you guys are doing? So Matthew, how have you been?
Oh, it's been good. It's actually been a quiet month since the last time we spoke, so I don't really have much to report
Were you
at
at
this
the
time.
Reason Rally?
I got sick that weekend,
Oh
so no, I
no!
missed it. I really wanted to go, and I know Steve had posted his long thing about how good the reason why he was, and I'm so sorry I missed that.
Yeah, I saw Seth Andrews had a little video thing that he put together too. So yeah, it looked like a really good time with a lot of fun people and also a bit of a carnival atmosphere with
Hmm
the preachers and the counter protesters and everything else. So
Yeah, it was pretty sad considering I'm probably the closest one of this atheist YouTube community that lives to DC, considering the Beltway is about 10 miles from right here.
right.
And yeah, I was just not feeling well enough to make it down there.
Leider.
Too
That's
bad.
German for like, oh, that's really
Yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah.
But you're better now.
Hmm
Gotten over it? Good, glad to hear it.
Mostly, I still have a little bit of sore throat, so I've got a nice glass of water over here.
Okay. Actually, I've had a little bit of a sore throat coming on, like on the right side. I guess well, facing me, it would be your left, but my right gland. And I've been, popping a couple ibuprofen every sort of 8 hours when it flares up. I should cut back on sugar. I noticed definitely that it seems to, the bacteria seem to be feeding or whatever it is on the sugar, so I
Mm.
should cut that off and starve them of their energy supply. But anyway, glad to hear you're feeling better, even though if you're still a little bit with your glass of water. Yeah, and Tom,
Hmm
how about you?
Yeah, it's always a quiet week in Lake Wobegon. Um, uh, for me, I had, uh, well, I posted, I think you saw it, I was in Minnesota yesterday with my son for my birthday slash Father's Day slash Flag Day celebration. Um, and we had uh, a really good time. It was hot and and exhausting, and we did a lot of walking by his new apartment. And but it was wonderful. I can't tell you how much I love that kid, and how much fun it is to spend time with him.
Now, that sounds like a really, really nice day out with lovely memories from start to finish.
Yeah, yeah. We saw a lake about a block from his new apartment building. He's going to move next month, and there were uh, herons and ducks and all kinds of birds, swallows, all kinds of things. And we saw two duck mamas with their kitties, and it's he's just over the moon because he gets to spend time someplace other than the concrete jungle.
Yeah, sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, and as for me, I think I've been in the UK and Norway, and that's it since I last talked to you. Although I've got something coming up next month which is related to the Atheist channel, and if I forget, remind me. But this last weekend, I spent working on, well, a couple videos. I've been meaning to get stuff out. I wrote in a group that I'm a member of that it's having, I call it like creators constipation. It's when you're kind of like, you're too backed up with good ideas for
Yeah.
videos and you don't have enough time to get to make them. And for me, the way that it manifests is I just keep thinking about the idea over and over again until I get it out on video and get it out of my head so that I can move on to the next one. It's kind of like it's how I write articles, to be honest. It's how I work academically as well. And was able to get 2 pieces out that I was really happy to move. I was happy for the movement to clear them out of my head. And then for when my dad came to visit, he took us. He was his thank you gift for me hosting him for like 9 weeks. He took us to Tenerife, and when I asked him what he wanted for his birthday, or he's like, oh, he's like one of those dads, don't worry about it, Chris. You know, you keep your money kind of guy. And if I lived there, it would be one thing I could like foist socks on him and underwear and things. But being so far away in Germany, I don't really want to go to like a Primark or something and then buy men's socks and ship them all the way to Wisconsin. It seems like not a very good use of my money. What I did was I've been working on a video of our holiday in Tenerife together, and I finished it at 12:30 last night, just in time for Father's Day. So that got uploaded this morning, and that way when he woke up in the States, it would be one of the first things he saw. So, and then I celebrated just sort of like getting that off my plate by going to, there's a racetrack in Cologne. It's actually like a 30-minute walk from my house. But if I have a little commuter scooter, or they call them here der Roller. I have my roller, and that takes me about 15 minutes if I go on my little push thing. So we went, and we put up blankets, and a bunch of my friends that I didn't realize were coming also showed up, and everybody brought food, and we had this massive picnic, and they're all breeding, so there were lots of small children around, very small children around. And yeah, put a little flutter on the horses, 2 races, and then I had to get back. But yeah, I'd never been to like a horse race before, so it was very exciting to see live.
Did you finally wind up betting on WikiLeaks?
I did bet on WikiLeaks, and that glue factory wannabe just came in last. I was so disappointed. Like, please come in 4th, you piece of shit. But no, it was utter humiliation. So I managed actually 3 bets before I left. Another one on a horse called Artemis, just because my friend's cat's name is Artemis, so it seemed like an obvious reason to choose that horse. Hello. Being the statistician, I don't look at the odds. Go with,
right.
That's a good name.
Right. You got to do it scientifically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I just want to open it up because of the topic I brought up is going to be pretty serious, and it might take a lot of time. So before we move into that, I just wanted to throw open the floor one more time to see if Matthew or Tom have anything you guys wanted to follow on from the last time, or should we move on?
Last time was pretty serious, so probably I didn't hear what your topic was, so I say move on.
Yeah, well,
it's not going to get better.
Yeah, these hangouts are really depressing, but it's only because I thought this would be an excellent time to unpack this and to also get other people. I wanted to reflect on the various elements of Orlando, if that's all right with you, in the shooting. And I know it's another massive topic, but it also comes at a time, like, I'm not going to talk to you guys till July, and it feels like this is the moment, and it's probably part of the national discourse. So I'm just going to start by outlining what I see are the overarching things about the event that I think need to be unpacked individually, and then we can kind of go around and see what you guys think, and if you want to talk about those elements or other ones, we can. But first of all, I mean, I'll start off by saying I saw the news here in Germany, and it floored me. It floored me in the way that Newtown floored me. I think I have multiple levels now of reaction for these kinds of human tragedies. Like when Paris happened, or when I was in the UK when the London bus bombings happened. I was in Scotland at the time, but I kind of have one set of reactions for terrorist attacks. Maybe it's a series of emotional responses to that. When I heard about the shootings in Florida, my reaction was again more on the massacre side, the mass shooting side of reactions. And as information came out about him being being a terrorist act and him aligning himself with some radical Islamic groups, I think for me the story became more complicated, but it stays a mass shooting that is also a hate crime, that is also a terrorist attack. And what I wanted to unpack with you guys is the fact that there are so many things bound up with this tragic loss of human life, this slaughtering of innocents because of hate, that we have to come to grips with. But I think we're not doing a very good job because of the way that the discourse has been set up. So yes, I think first the stories of the people and the things, that I saw, the text message exchange, the various ways that cities around the world have rallied to support the gay community, not only in the U.S. but in their cities as well, and hopefully in their countries by extension.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not but just end of like that. It's like just talking about it now starts to break my heart, and I'm so tired of watching people be slaughtered like this, and it happens in our country in a way that happens in no other country. And I think that unpacking the hate crime and the homophobia, the self-loathing that goes with it, is one part of the story. I think access to weapons of mass destruction, mass human life destruction, and the ease with which people in the U.S. can get them, and the result of that access, is another element. And then I think there is the religiously fomented homophobia and hate that, when indoctrinated from childhood, produces people who are self-loathing, self-hating, end up with acting out in violence because of their self-directed hate. And the need to address deadly homophobia and other forms of like deadly misogyny and lack of human rights that exist in all areas, but obviously in this case we're looking at Islam. So those are why I wanted to kind of maybe do a hangout about this and unpack a lot of these topics rather than do a video, because otherwise I think it would be like a 5-part video series. So.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody want to pick up from that?
Yeah, in thinking about this when it happened, and then I'm thinking in terms of right before that, there was this outrage that I felt deeply about the Stanford swimmer, that rape case.
Yeah.
And then Orlando happened, and I thought I was as outraged and sad as I could possibly be. And then with the assassination of Joe Cox the other day in Britain, I realized that I'm not maximally outraged at this point. There is a numbness to to the next to the next outrage, but there is it's like it becomes depressing and almost expected, but you can't really. I don't think I can let myself just give way to the despair of the whole situation. And I like the idea of looking into the intersectionality of the various elements that go into in this case the terrorist terrorist whatever the terrorist attacks. So yeah, that's my initial thought on the matter.
One of the not hopeful things, but what gave me some, I don't know why, maybe I can't explain why I felt like it was relief, was I started to see the meme circulate where it was a white background and then in like black lettering was like written "Pray for America," and then it's "Pray" is crossed out and it says "Policy Change."
Right.
Policy change for America. he would not have been able to kill this many people if he did not have access to that weapon.
Right.
And I know the UK, people are shocked at the assassination of the MP, and obviously rightly so. I mean, it's not. We have mass shootings, 350 last year in the United States, and they don't even make national news anymore.
Right.
The assassination of a politician is always headline news, but I think gun violence is just so rare there because people can't get access to weapons that have 100 rounds to them and are, equipped to be spraying bullets into crowds. Yeah, but you're right in terms of seeing a series of really depressing news stories or events that just make you question why you're not more misandrist.
Yeah.
And I think it is this: when you have hope in humanity and then these things happen and people who shouldn't die. It just does make you sort of despair for the direction that we're going in. But you're right, Tom, about hope, is that that's the difference, I guess, between the misandrist and everybody else, is that when we're knocked, we still want to find a reason to make sure that people didn't die in vain, that something happens as a consequence to make sure it doesn't happen again, to look out for families so that they never get the call about their kids being on the end of one of these terrorist or madman's guns. Matthew, I know you got your mic on. I appreciate that for background noise, but I don't want to make sure that you have a chance to jump in here on this.
Well, my problem is I don't know if I have anything really constructive to add, just because I don't know. I've obviously seen the news, but I don't know what the situation is or anything I could add to that. But I hope what I found interesting, and this was pointed out by another YouTuber, that we're almost a year after Obergefell, and people are celebrating that Supreme Court decision, and this is just darkens that annual celebration for Obergefell. And but I see it, hopefully, as you say, hopefully this wasn't in vain, that this can be a rallying point for the LGBT community, that this will make them stronger, that they will have allies outside their own group that will make this stronger, and then that we'll see that those who are anti-LGBT will find themselves on the wrong side of the arc of history. Hopefully that will speed up that process, so that there is some good, so that we can denormalize the hate that was expressed that caused this tragedy.
Oh, yeah. Well said. Well said. From my understanding of the reporting, there's been evidence that the shooter had visited that club several times before, that he had messaged men using gay social or dating apps, and there is evidence that people said people around him said they wouldn't be surprised if he was a closeted gay man. What was striking about the attack and why it's clearly a hate crime is because he was targeting a specific community. And he targeted that community because of hate that he had been indoctrinated with since childhood. And I think personally, looking at it and looking at the description of he had been abusive to his first wife. He had issues that indicate to me that when whatever it was in him snapped, that it was a lashing out in that sort of self-hatred. And he tried to cover it up by naming a bunch of groups that he knew, because the ideology of the groups that he listed, like Hezbollah and ISIS and the Taliban, they're not in agreement with each other. So it seems more like his obsession with homosexuality was driven more about a personal pathology, rather than him engaging in this particular act in order to advance a theological agenda.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Matthew.
Well, all I was going to say is I cannot imagine the situation of growing up as a minority, in this case an LGBT minority, in a group that does this indoctrination, that has this undue influence to force people to view these differences as evil. And if you're indoctrinated like this from childhood, I can't imagine the psychosis that builds up in a person as they age, that they know what they are, yet what they are is evil according to whatever text or whatever source that they're learning this from. So yeah, I can't understand it myself, because even though I was in, as I've mentioned in an earlier podcast, I've been in that kind of group, but I wasn't one of those minorities, so I can't imagine the self-loathing that comes from um, having that undue influence over me, that being indoctrinated in that way.
Yeah, I think it's hard to, especially growing up, yeah, not in that world. Even if you were in a religiously fundamentalist household, if you were part of the in group, if you were straight, that alienation hasn't been part of you. And then yes, there's a whole lot of other patriarchal things that go along with homophobia that intensify the threat to what is a man around that as well. So from basically once he probably realized that he liked men, he liked cock, which some of the best of us do. But for him, that ended up, I really do think, and again, I don't have evidence for this, it's just putting together what his behavior was, and then the group that he lashed out at, and his incoherency on his fundamentalist theology, that this was more driven by that, hate. It's driven in for so long, and eventually, you turn that hate against the object that you want, and you see this with the kind of really messed up guy situation where he wants a woman, but she rejects him, so he hates her, and then he starts to stalk her. And of course, it can go in the other direction too. But I think in this case, the combination of all those things plus violence and access to guns, it created a tragedy that never should have happened. He should have been a happy gay man, and we wouldn't be talking about this today.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that is one of the things that's being picked up on by the right and the gun nuts is this Islamic terrorism business, and they overlook the whole thing about the incoherence of his naming three groups that have nothing but loathing for each other, and the fact that apparently he wasn't particularly religious in his past life, or in his earlier life, and not even apparently not lately. And I saw an interview with Rick Scott, governor of Florida, where the reporter was doing a real good job. She was asking him, what about the guns? What about the hatred and all this kind of stuff? And she went after him, for a number of follow-ups, and he kept going back to, we have to defeat ISIS. And it's like, this has very little to do with ISIS. It has a whole lot more to do with, well, if there is Islamic terrorism in there, it's probably spawned by what you were talking about, his upbringing that made him think what he was and who he was detestable, and he had to fight it. And so he fought it by, lashing out. Anyway, one of the things on the other side, though, is that there's a script to this. You have the mass shooting, and you have people come out and take positions on various sites, and you have folks mostly on the let's not do anything side saying it's too early to talk about this stuff. And Scott said that too. It's too early to talk about what we should do about this. But in this case, you mentioned the meme about policy change. There were tons of memes about enough. No, stop with this thoughts and prayers. Let's let's look this straight in the face and do something about it. Because thoughts and prayers are bullshit. And in reaction, I think partly to that, and also partly to the to the outrage over this happening again and again and again, and nothing else happening. We had, among other things, we had the filibuster, the Democratic filibuster, in it would be the Senate.
Yes.
You know, filibuster in the House,
No.
but the Democratic filibuster to move forward at least two pieces of really basic common sense gun control legislation, and they got the Republicans to agree to at least vote on those two issues. So I think there is a sense that this is a little bit different in that way, but it's a sense of hopefulness, not a sense of we got, this time it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of confidence that it's going to go anywhere, but
Well,
it feels a little bit. We're going in a slightly different direction, and if this changes the trajectory of 10 or 20 mass shootings down the line, I don't want to say that would be. It's not worth it, but it's.
It has to happen sometime.
We have to start somewhere, and I think that this is maybe. It could be a watershed.
I've been hoping for watersheds every time I see a mass shooting, just because, I think maybe it is the fact that I know I feel disgusted as an American that we've done nothing of consequence since Newtown.
Well, one of the statements going on with what Tom said is, when is it late enough for us to have this conversation? If we've been having these shootings, if I think about just the ones that have occurred during my adult life, it's always too early to have the conversation, and then the next shooting comes up, and then it's always too early to have the conversation, and then the next one comes up. I would like to think we won't have 10 to 20 more mass shootings, but obviously that's probably a pipe dream.
We'll probably have that before school starts again. I mean, right now, with 315 mass shootings last year, 13,000. I mean, I'm quoting from Jonathan Pye here, who's just made a video on this, which I would recommend people go watch. It's called Does Anybody Need a Machine Gun? Jonathan Pye. He's a great British political sort of satirist, comedian dude. Go watch him. And then the other thing is, I guess as long as I'm doing a shout-out, because we've talked about the Islam thing, I want to come back on that, because I would definitely have no problems linking the problems of Islam and homophobia with what's been going on, but I want to do it in a smart way and unpack it differently from how Trump does it. But Poisoning the Well, I don't know if you guys know them, but go check out their channel. Hilarious. They did a great takedown of the Christian pastor, I think his name is Steve Anderson, Pastor Anderson, who made an awful, disgusting video that got taken down as hate speech within 24 hours on YouTube, but they got a copy of it, and they keep it basically, I think, for historical purposes of what a piece of shit this guy was. So the other part of it, when we're talking about the Islamophobia embedded within Islam, the unfortunate consequence of what happened was that it also brought out a lot of scumbags in the Christian ministry. There was another pastor who made a quote, again, about not enough of them dying, and I'm fairly confident that people's tolerance for that kind of language when they see it has been dropping precipitously, and especially now since this massacre, hate crime, terrorist act, people will be less likely to not speak up when someone says something homophobic. At least I would hope so, because, we can't tolerate this.
I would hope that such pastors start losing their jobs, and if they don't, then I would really worry about those congregations. Another statement I was thinking of when Tom was speaking is, even if ISIS miraculously disappeared for whatever reason, it still doesn't fix the hate problem we have here in this country. it doesn't matter what other people's rhetoric is, even as evil as it may be. We still have a hate problem here.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and you can't hide that kind of hate under my free speech. You know, there are limits in the U.S., and the U.S. is very liberal in terms of what people can say. But if you think you can say anything under the First Amendment, you're wrong. And if you are saying hateful, disgusting, vile things, then I think you should be willing to be called on it. And hopefully lots and lots of people will call you on it and tell you, I don't want to hear that out of you. Like, don't hang out with me. Don't post to my Facebook page because I don't want your vile, disgusting views in my life. And you know, I think that kind of censure, yes, it will shut down communication, but on the other hand, the option for the person, let's see, on the tolerant side, is to just tolerate someone spewing vile hatred and thinking that if nobody disagrees with them, then everyone must agree with them. So I think, yeah, taking responsibility for things and your views and your attitudes and is an important part. And that's not, I mean, obviously Islam is a whole other issue in terms of what we can do to, you know, help modernize that religion and help moderate Muslims modernize their own religion. But it's not like that's the only community, as you point out, where this kind of hateful speech takes place.
Yeah. One of the things that I was thinking during this time is that the American Muslim community, from what I can hear, from what I've heard around, is much more liberal than Muslim communities otherwise in a lot of places, other parts of the world. Much more committed to free speech, to equal rights, to things like that. There is definitely a very strong part of that, strain of that, in this country that's not that way. But I think the potential exists for American Muslims to be a modernizing force in the world if we don't fuck it up. And Trump and so many other people are trying to fuck it up really badly by demonizing these people, which will only drive them inward and make the radical parts of their religion seem more attractive. You know, we got to circle the wagons because everybody is against us. And I think that's why I think one of the things about the coming election that's going to be so important is if Trump or that attitude wins or even influences policy majorly, we lose an incredible opportunity, I think, to be part of the solution worldwide.
I don't know all of the stats because that's sort of, you know, Islam in the West is not my main topic area. I've also heard, well, one, the U.S. population is quite small, so you get less variation within a smaller group than, you know, if you had like, 50 million. So there's also just natural, I think, smaller group effects. And from what I understand, yes, that Muslims in America are more integrated than other places in Western countries. That there's a higher degree of social integration in other areas where there are communities that are more closed off. I can't verify that because, again, that's not my area. I'm repeating what my understanding is. Just to like boom, 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 not an expert. But certainly one of the things that I found incredibly disappointing, it's always hard to sort of choose your words when you're about to describe something that Donald Trump says. But the way that he basically conflated the fact that the terrorist / hate crime dude / mass shooter was Muslim, and conflated that not with his Americanness because he was born in New York State, in New York City, but sort of jumped that ship right over into saying that he was Afghan and making it an us versus them situation, which is actually, that's what ISIS sees in the world, is Islam versus the West. So Trump, that was the second time, of course, that he had denied an American citizen the fact that he was a citizen. He also did it earlier in the month with the judge who's of Mexican descent, who he said was Mexican.
Right.
And it doesn't help the credibility. It gets in the way of the critique, to be honest. If you start getting your facts wrong from the start, and you misrepresent information, and you start off with basically a series of lies about the facts and evidence, you can't have a real discussion. And I think this was my biggest problem, was as the information about his gay hidden lifestyle came out, that if we were talking accurately about what was happening and why those people died, it wouldn't be because of ISIS. It would be because of the homophobia in Islam and in other religions, but in this case it was manifest from somebody who was practicing the religion. And the way that ended up, whatever his breaking point was, flipping his switch to targeting the gay community and killing people. Because, as I think Matthew pointed out, the hate is the problem here. And if you're attributing the hate wrongly, you're saying they hate us because of our freedoms. Well, he's an American. He has his freedoms, so he can't really hate us because of our freedoms when he has the same freedoms. Then what is the real issue? What was the trigger point for him? What was the motivation for this crime? And if you turn it into blind things about hating the West and they hate our freedoms, again, it just seems you're not talking about the real problem. Yeah. Anyone else? That was my rant done. So didn't.
You bring up so many thoughts; it's hard to keep up on one of
Sorry.
them. You started talking about Trump, and I always think of Trump as a narcissist for whom the facts mean nothing. They're tools for whatever his agenda is, because I don't even have a clue what that would be. You're right. I was just looking at the Pew Research Center, and according to them, Muslims are just shy of 1% of the population of the U.S., which compares to 70% being Christian of some form. And of course 22% being of others, of nons.
Yeah.
So it with almost a third of a billion people, you're looking at what could be an insular group. And one statement either you or Tom said was about bans or whatever kind of governmental persecution doesn't work. It just makes them hunker down and practice their religion anymore. It becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy for them that they will be persecuted in some way. So saying you're going to ban any kind of religion that preaches hate doesn't work, because it just makes their faith stronger. It becomes almost the cognitive dissonance that even though they see the world changing around them, they don't, and they prefer their views the way they are.
Yeah, I think, well, and then there's just, too many people that I've seen, well, I'm sure they're a smaller portion of the total population, but saying things like, yes, we should ban all Muslims, or we should make, get rid of mosques, all of this sort of just blanket Islamophobia, which, you can't, on the one hand, say that you want to protect America and its constitutional freedoms, like the government not telling people what religion they can have, and then say, I also want to tell people you can't have this kind of religion. You can't you can't square that circle. And people, I think, I've seen this before when we had recently, well, we had the Cologne attacks, as you guys know, and then in the last month or so, there was a music festival somewhere else in Germany, and some women were again groped and robbed in a similar sort of sex attack. And you see people in certain communities on the far right who are focused almost, it seems, daily on just abusing Muslims as a group, just generally as a group, not what individuals within that group are doing, just as a group. And they will glom onto these events and say, oh, Muslim men are raping women, Muslim men are attacking women, Muslim men are killing, doing all of these things. They don't actually care about the sexual assault victims when it's a white-on-white crime. And they pick up these tragic incidents and immediately try to spin them for their anti-Muslim purposes. Now, people might say, oh, but don't people who want to see gun control do the same thing? Well, yeah, we do. And you know what? This guy was an American citizen with a right to get a gun, and what he did with it was he used it to turn his hate into bullets to kill people. And if he wasn't able to get a gun, he might have still tried to engage in some kind of attack, but not nearly as many people would have been injured, and maybe he could have been knocked down and prevented from stabbing people or whatever else. So I also get very frustrated when I see these convenient sympathizers coming in and grabbing victims in order to then use them to smash over their particular group that they hate, which is just Muslims as a blanket group. And again, it stops us from having an intelligent, thoughtful conversation that I think we owe. If people die because they were gay, and we can try to put some more focus on what do we do about murderous homophobia, especially religiously encouraged and protected deadly homophobia, and can stop self-hatred and stop someone else being pushed into this direction, then God, we owe it to them to have conversations and try to figure out a way forward, whether it's policy changes or other discussions in communities, whether we as atheists need to step up and support people who are Muslim in the LGBT community, pushing that message within their community, and just looking beyond the religion and looking at humanity. And I think we need to do this. We have to, every time we say we have to do something, because doing nothing is just not an option.
Well, that gets back to the comment of when is it the good time to have the conversation, and we need to have the conversation. We can't wait till the next one because it'll never be soon enough, or it'll always be too soon.
Can you check your mic connection, just because you were sounding a little bit scratchy to me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that.
And you were saying good things. I want to make sure everybody hears you.
Well, like I said, it was just getting back to the idea that we need to make time for this conversation. We can't wait until it's late enough to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tom. What were you going to say? Anything?
I was going to say one thing, Matt. You're still you're still a little scratchy.
Yeah.
I
don't know if you want to drop out of the Hangout and reconnect. Maybe that'll help.
I don't know. Maybe Comcast is doing weird things to me.
It's okay. It's getting better.
Now you're better now. Yeah. Damn Comcast.
We did hear you. It was just a little scratchy, but
right.
Your message did get through.
Right.
If I could have steered the conversation just tack a little bit, I was shown an article by one of my Facebook friends. It's related because it talks about in Hillsborough County, Florida, that the Pride flag was raised on the Hillsborough County Center, meant to be a sign of respect and remembrance for the victims. But the next paragraph goes on to say, but a day after it was raised, the commissioner said it may be offending Christian employees and questioned whether it should be taken down. And I'm wondering, what kind of offense do you get from having a rainbow flag over your courthouse or your executive building? And this is where people are looking to find divisions rather than coming together as a community to solve the problem.
Yeah, pretty much. Because yes, there have been amazing reactions, and we saw rallies around the world, across the U.S. and other places, and I think a lot of people have been shocked by this, but there are those out there whose worldviews apparently are impervious to the kind of basic human empathy one would think Jesus would be quite in favor of.
Mm-hmm. What do you think?
We have a long way to go when I posted the link to the article in the chat view.
Thanks.
Where one person says, it is still, in my view, unconscionable that the county administrator didn't express to the board that this divisive symbol might create an uncomfortable workplace environment for many of his employees.
Wow.
I'm trying to wonder how a flag outside the building suddenly makes it uncomfortable for the employees inside. I mean, how is showing support for a marginalized community making the place uncomfortable? I just want inside the mind of these people. I'm not saying anything bad about them. I just want to understand how this is making you uncomfortable. You have families, you have dozens of families who have lost loved ones, and yet you're feeling uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, it's not that I object to calling this a terrorist attack because it is in part a terrorist attack, but to my mind it is primarily and first and foremost a hate crime.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I view this. I always view it through the lens of the hate crime first because of the community that was targeted. And if we look at other terrorist attacks, it's done in places to disrupt people's lives. I guess there's probably quite a lot of attacks on synagogues and other Jewish community centers as, like targeted with hate crime things. But if you look at terrorist attacks like Paris, like the bombing of the buses or the underground, they're meant to disrupt everybody's life. And this was a very unique attack because of the community that it was directed to, and the fact that he actually came out of that community even if he was closeted. But yeah, sorry, I kind of got back on a bit of a tangent here, but yes, it's, to my mind, first a hate crime. And to deny that it was part of it, and to say the flag makes you feel uncomfortable above your workplace, it's like denying the fact that they were gay was why they were targeted and murdered or injured.
Yeah. And then on the other hand, there were at least a couple of Marines in Camp Pendleton, California, who I think one of them posted it, and there are two of them that are kind of involved in this little getting the message out. It's a soldier, probably a Marine, holding in whatever the latest version of the M16 is, and focused close up on the action of the M16, and it says, "Coming to a gay bar near you." And it was posted in a Marine, among other places. It was posted in a Marines only group of some kind, and apparently it got a fair amount of support. And my hope is that, well, first, my real hope is that they were just fucking around and didn't think beyond, hey, this is funny to us for some crazy reason. But the other thing is, I'm hoping that the Marine Corps looks into this and decides whether or not this is something that's worthy of discipline, maybe up to and including getting rid of them, because this is, you're supposed to, the Marine Corps has been reasonably good, I think, at integrating minority communities from the top brass. I don't know if the Marine if this necessarily always gets down to the grunts, but I think they've been doing a reasonable job of getting their policies in line and their training in line. But this is one of those things that had this been a Donald Trump rally that got shot up, or had it been a white church that got shot up by pretty much anybody, the reaction by probably these very people would be much different. We're being oppressed, and we have to do something about the bad people who are doing this.
Yeah, you didn't really hear from the white community any concern when a black church was targeted, because they didn't feel attacked as Christians. We know why Dylan Roof walked into that church. It's because of the same reason, the same kind of hate directed outward, turning into bullets that kill people in a deliberate act. So yeah, I think there's a whole lot to unpack in that story that you've kind of just related here.
Yeah, and there was also before Charleston, there was also within a year or two, I think, before that, there was a spate of burning of black churches, and the I don't remember the wider Christian community getting the same kind of offended and outraged reaction as to, say, the flag in the courthouse that you were talking about, Matt.
North Carolina, yeah.
I think it was Florida.
Oh, were you thinking about? I was thinking about the black church and then the flag coming down in Nikki Haley's
Right.
North Carolina.
Yeah. There's that's a positive thing. But I guess I'm thinking about the Matthew was talking about that rainbow flag in
Oh, right. Okay.
in a place in Florida, and they don't seem to see the disconnect between feeling persecuted as a majority in this country with things like that rainbow flag deal, and Muslims feeling oppressed by the all this stuff, and gay people getting shot in record numbers. There's something going on there.
Yeah, I think. Well, we'll see how we're doing on. Oh yeah, 7 minutes to the top of the hour.
Well,
I wanted to kind of, I'll let you jump in, Matthew. I want to kind of end a little bit on a high note, and it's not really, it's a tempered high note because this is a really depressing topic, but I feel like at least I've been able to air some of the stuff that I've been frustrated about with you guys. So thanks for the chance to kind of unpack these ideas and talk about them. Now, I live in I watch U.S. news, over the internet, so I'm not exposed to Fox News, and I'm sure that the way that they've talked about the massacre / terrorist attack / hate crime is quite different. But at least on MSNBC, where the coverage has been focused a lot on the victims and the families and the community, and also the solidarity that other places have been showing with the community, I feel that this moment has unified us in a way to support our friends or our neighbors or our colleagues who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, intersex. I think I've got all the letters right. I'm working because each of them is their own category, and so I mean the full panoply of human sexuality, basically. Because I saw a lot of people just putting up posts saying to my gay and lesbian friends, I love you. I just wanted to tell you, remind you. And there was a lot of this sort of, it was meme stuff, and people would add their own things. But it felt like, in some ways, the entire, more than I'd seen before. It felt like there were a lot of people who were reaching out and actively saying, I see you, I care about you, I want you to be safe. I realize that you are a target because of who you love, and that makes me concerned, and I want to be here to help you. That's seeing that happen around me, because I don't really get in for like that kind of mass meme stuff. If I have something to tell somebody, I'll tell them. But I did see it, like the way that people change their picture, in support of something else, and a lot of that happening, and it felt very therapeutic. It felt like people were actively trying to reach out and touch someone, touch their friends, touch people that they lived across the country from, just to let them know that they were there for them. And that made me feel a little bit better. I felt like that the U.S. has rallied around the lesbian gay community in a way that we celebrated their right to get a marriage, to get married or to have access to legal rights. But this actually felt like we all got together to mourn with them too. And it felt like that was, what was lacking, or what people were looking for when the AIDS tragedy was really striking the gay community, and people were saying we're dying, and Ronald Reagan wouldn't say the word. I feel like we've redeemed ourselves a bit, at least on the progressive left liberal hippie side, in terms of being more active, outreaching allies rather than just passively watching and saying to a pollster, yes, I agree, people should be able to get married. I think it felt more personal to a lot of people this time.
At this point, if any marginalized community among us is unsafe, we're all unsafe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was noticing on my Facebook feed, a lot of my relatives who mostly post pictures of their kids and activities that they're doing with their families and jobs and things like that. A lot of them that I wouldn't have expected have posted very supportive messages about the gay community and very angry messages about the excuses being made by gun people and politicians and things like that, not to do anything to bring the country together in a positive way. And I think that's we're looking for silver linings. That's a very small one, but it is one that I've noticed.
I would agree with that. I mean, again, just from anecdotal evidence, but seeing,
Right.
sort of like surprised at who puts up who is putting out messages or sharing things. I think it has maybe softened some hearts and opened up some arms from people. And again, I would have preferred it didn't happen. I would have preferred that these people were, doing whatever they were going to do on a Sunday. But if they died at the hands of a man because of hate, then making sure that fewer people hate. Yeah.
It's up to those of us still alive to make sure that they didn't die in vain.
Yeah. And that's just, talking one person down or trying to speak up when someone is just spewing off hate, whether it's homophobia or Islamophobia. Again, it's fine to critique ideas. It's fine to have debates. But if you start dehumanizing entire groups of people, that crosses the line to where, we start making analogies to the Nazis and Hitler, because dehumanizing somebody is the first step to, distancing them from you, to treat them poorly, even to kill them. So, you're going to have discussions about free speech and what people are allowed to say, but some speech does lead to hate and violence and death. So, again, trying to find some way of moving forward from this. Yeah. And hopefully there will be the no-fly list will be added, the universal background checks. Easy thing to do. There are digital trigger locks that are available now where only the person who's authorized to fire a gun can fire a gun. There are a lot of, and also just funding the federal agencies and the police agencies to create databases to keep on top of this stuff. Give them the money they need to track guns and track people who get crimes, have a domestic violence arrest and conviction in one state into the database, so if he or she tries to buy a gun in another state, it comes up. I mean, I know we see the stuff on TV like CSI, and it all looks amazing, and we think, oh wow, the feds must have everything. The NRA has made it a point to defund at every level through the Republicans in Congress the various infrastructure needed to engage in these kinds of communication. And then when pieces aren't put together and people slip through the cracks, like, why were you on top of this? Well, it would really help if we had a well-funded national registry of where all the guns are in this country and who is applying for them, and not letting them have their gun after 3 days if it takes longer than 3 days to do a background check. That's not a good enough excuse. I don't want to wait more than 72 hours for my gun. If you need a gun in 72 hours or less, you probably don't need a gun. So there are so many steps that we could take. And we need the people in Congress to do it. And that means we need the people to vote at the ballot boxes in November. And as I said in a video, I think it was after another shooting, vote a straight Democratic ticket. And if you're going to say the Democrats might not do it because they let the Brady bill ban, pass, that's fine. We know the Republicans won't do it, and we hold them accountable at the ballot box in the next November that they're up when they don't do it. But we're not going to get anywhere with Republicans who are definitely in bed with the NRA. We need to elect Democrats who will stand up to the NRA, and then we need to put enough of them in Congress to actually override the will of the NRA.
Right.
Yeah.
Amen.
Okay, well, that seems like at least, yes, something you can do in November to make a change. Vote a straight Democratic ticket. At least once in your life, you should try it. like a lot of things. All right, well, I want to thank Matthew and Tom, my co-hosts on our monthly Patron Hangout. I really hope that next time we will have a more positive topic. But if there are any updates on this one, we can always come back to it and revisit it. Maybe this House will have actually done something with the bill the Senate's going to be taking up this week. So for the 6 viewers who have stuck with us, 7 viewers, someone just came back in order to get told goodbye as we're going off the air. Thanks so much for your time and attention, you guys who have been watching. Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Tom. Do you want to, Matthew, say goodbye to the 7 viewers?
Well, I was going to do it during your normal sign-off, but go ahead.
Okay. All right, Tom, do you want to say goodbye?
Bye.
All right, everyone. I've been Christy. You've been
I've
awesome.
been Matthew.
And he's been Matthew, and he's been Tom.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And you've been awesome.
And you guys have been awesome. All right, guys.
You've been awesome.
And I've been awesome. Oh, even better. Oh, thanks. Oh, big group hug. Bye. All right. Talk to you guys later. And you two stick around. I'm just going to stop the broadcast. All right. Bye, viewers.